Good morning to all our culinary experts and our food lovers, millennials and senior citizens, midlifers like me, people in government, people in the rural areas, people in urban centers, people in the private sector, all our friends who have been with us from the beginning as we started this Stories for a Better Normal. Para sa mga first-timer po sa ating first date, itong Stories for a Better Normal ay isang webinar na Zoom that is live on Facebook. Kaya binabati ko ang aking mga kasamanwa sa Antique na palaging sumusubaybay at kasabay natin sa ating journey, sa ating mga istorya, sa ating mga kwento. Pero ito pong mga kwentong to ay hindi lang kwento, wala lang, pero ito ay science-based, research-based, galing po sa mga eksperto, sa mga may karanasan na nagbibigay po ng liwanag sa atin sa panahon ng pandemya, na nagbibigay ng mga kaalaman, ng mga food for the soul. At ngayong araw na ito, siguro sa lahat ng topics mula sa simula, and we've had more than 8 episodes, we've tackled ecological solid waste management, we've done permaculture, we've done sustainable mobility and protected bike lanes, we've done mental health even, and now I think what feeds our body, what feeds our soul, what feeds our mind is food. Nako, pagkain. At ang pagkain nito ay hindi basta kinakain, gaya ng aking saging na saba. Siguro tatanungin ko sa ating mga experts mula sa Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, ang kahalagahan ng saging na saba. In fact, last week, sinabi ng ating mga diet and nutrition experts na ang mga top 3 na pagkain na good for mental health ay, sana naalala ng staff ko or your online, saging, pinya, avocado. Buti na lang, meron ako mga tanim na ganito. At nakikita ko ang aking kaibigang paborito ko sa Iloilo, sa Panay, I see Luth Camiña. I think I can see her there. Wow, I wish we could have our webinar in her beautiful heritage home. But I will not introduce them first. Alam nyo, kahapon, I was in a webinar of the millennials, 18-year-old children, youths, very well organized, called Labang Pangkalusugan. And what they did was they asked us to introduce ourselves. So I have a list, of course, with all your photos from Chef Jam to Datu Shariff, to Ami Besa and Louella Eslao-Alix and Luth Camiña and Arvin Villalon. Sinabi ko na, but I wanted each and every one of you to say what you'd like us to remember you or to know you about and your best recipe. Then we will go to the question and answer. But first, so that you understand, the Stories for a Better Normal is a collaboration between my office, Office of Deputy Speaker Lauren Legarda, in the House of Representatives, representing the Lone District of Antique, katabi ni Luth Camiña sa Arevalo, sa Iloilo. And it's also a partnership, as you see, with the Climate Change Commission, which aims to streamline climate change adaptation, mitigation, and disaster risk reduction in our national and local life, in our everyday life. The Institute of Climate and Sustainable Cities is also supportive of this endeavor, as well as Climate Reality Philippines. Of course, DENR through Attorney Ipat Luna, and we have the Department of Agriculture, the Agriculture Training Institute, and we will continue to give starter kits, just like I gave away the past weeks. I hope I still have. We will give 10 starter kits today, and the seeds that I save. Ako po ay isang seed saver. Mamaya tatanungin ko kay Miss Louella, kay Luth, kay Datu Shariff. Are you the brother? Yes, you're the brother of Bay Pendatun? No. Anyway, Yes, yes. Anyway, okay, I'm going ahead. So we have all our guests, and I'm sure they will tell us about the importance of culinary heritage. Ano ba ho ang culinary heritage? Sanay kayo, napapanood ako, tangible and intangible heritage in our program called Dayaw. Ang ating pagkain ay meron din kasarinlan. Ang ating pagkain ay merong kabihasnan. Ang ating pagkain ay merong storya, merong kasaysayan. Hindi basta kinakain, ito lahat ay may pinanggalingan, may ibig sabihin. Ang ibang mga kultura, marami sa ating indigenous peoples, ay merong tradisyon at ritual. Kaya sa araw na ito, pag-uusapan po natin what is the significance of food to our culture. For us Filipinos love food, and food is what brings us together. Saan man tayo sa ating bansa, saan man tayo sa ating mundo. Just a little side note, alala ko sa Venice Biennale, dahil every year nandun tayo sa Art and Architecture Biennale. Alam na mga staff ko yan, sabi ko, oh, ayoko ng puro pasta. Hinanap ko yung Filipino Association, ang bait, nagluto para sa akin ng masarap na adobo. Naku, nandun ako sa lobby ng maliit na hotel sa may exhibit, nakapajama at gano'n, dinala yung adobo. Naku, naubos yung sa isang lalagyan ng adobo. Anyway, one of my favorite is adobo. And adobo, as all your chefs and culinary experts would know, can be cooked in more than a dozen ways. Sige. Okay, Chef Jam Melchor, you've been with us for 2 episodes of stories, right? Philippine Culinary Heritage Movement, the head of the Slow Food Youth Network. Are they with us, Chef Jam? I hope that our Slow Food Youth Network are with us para hindi lang puro mga midlife and senior citizens ang palaging kasama natin. Ikaw naman, considered millennial ka pa, di ba, Chef Jam?
Siyempre po,
Hi,
thank you for
Chef
having me
Jam.
today.
Okay, yes. And I hope after this, all of you can share the not-so-secret recipes that we can do during these days of pandemic. At ngayon, dumadami ang mga online orders, hindi ba? Let's make sure sanitary, let's make sure malinis, walang sakit, at mga naka-headband, at mga naka-face shield, at saka naka-mask, at naka-gloves. Anyway, so pakilala natin, o ako na ba? Sige. Si Datu Shariff Pendatun. He is our chef who will talk about the cuisine of Muslim Mindanao. Yes, you're the younger brother or older brother of Bay Pendatun, right? Datu Shariff.
Older,
You are
yeah,
the baby.
yeah.
You are the baby I used to see in the newsroom before, correct?
Yeah, well, you used to pinch my cheeks, so the cheeks are still here. I'm very glad to see you again, Deputy Speaker.
Okay. Yes, how interesting. Okay, just introduce yourself very briefly on your expertise on the culinary traditions of Muslim Mindanao.
Okay, so what qualifies me to talk about the traditions of Muslim Mindanao? First is that I have roots there. My grandfather was born in Pagalungan, Maguindanao. And because of my travels to the islands, Basilan, Sulu, and in Lanao, I was able to do some research. I was able to talk to the locals and find out about the different ways of cooking, different techniques of cookery that they have. So with regard to the cuisine of Muslim Mindanao, when I talk about it, when people ask me to share what I know about it, I take it into the context of maritime Southeast Asia and the cuisines of the other ethno-linguistic groups in the Philippines as well, so that it's seen through these lenses.
And are there special cuisines unique to Muslim Mindanao? Yes, I know, because remember,
Yeah.
when I used to go, when I was perhaps your age, I used to go to where Nur Miswari was and where Datu Sema was, Muslim in Sema. I
Right.
would go to Sulu, in Danan even. I would go to Marawi
Right.
city, beautiful marketplace and beautiful MSU. I would go by the lake, and I would also go to Maguindanao.
Right.
I forget the place of the MNLF, and Ang sarap-sarap. Palaging may dilaw na atsuete or turmeric, luyang dilaw, no? Sa
Right.
linuluto.
Right.
Okay, we'll get to that later. Now, we have another expert. It's so interesting. So Chef Jam, we have the millennial chef of slow food, we have Muslim Mindanao, and Datu Shariff should not be stingy with his recipes. You have to share with us your Muslim recipes. Our guest is the owner na, alam mo, sana bukas, kumain ako sa kanyang magandang bahay na na-restore, hindi tinibag, sa Malate Ermita District, hindi ba, Miss Ami? Pero ang kanilang talagang original na restaurant ay sa Brooklyn. In fact, today, just on Instagram, I saw your husband who was talking about, let me see, was it turmeric or no? He was conversing with Patis Tesoro on yung harvest ni Patis na sabi niya $12 sa Brooklyn. O, tinan mo, nagkataon, it was something that Patis said that she was harvesting, and sabi niya, dito, mahal sa New York. Anyway, we have a branch in Malate. Are you still open? I'd love, after COVID, or even during COVID, mag-distancing na lang, or maski ako lang mag-isa magpunta sa'yo. I love it there. I was there with my son on my birthday some years ago. Thank you for joining us. Oh, but are you in Malate? You're in New York now. Miss
I'm in Brooklyn.
Besa. Huh?
Hi, I'm in Brooklyn. And
Okay.
I don't know if you remember the first time I met you, I didn't realize you were the senator because you look too young to be a senator.
You know, I cannot hear what you're saying. Can you say it again? I love what you're saying.
You're still very pretty and beautiful and young,
I love
okay?
you. I love your cooking. Wait, while you are in New York, bukas ba ho yung inyong Malate? Sige na, akin na nga yung address. Bukas ba ho yung Malate?
We're just beginning to start. This Friday, si Romy has been cleaning preparing all the PPEs and all
Alam
that.
nyo, gustong-gusto ko mag-advertise kasi importante malaman. Ano po yung pangalan, yung Purple Yam, alam ko yun, kumain na ako doon once or twice. Ano po yung address niyo sa Malate para po alam ng mga tao pag reopen nyo?
603 Julio Nakpil, corner Bocobo.
Okay.
So we are
Nakpil,
doing takeout delivery there.
Oh, very good. Ay, excited. Mag-take out na ako pagkatapos nito. I'm like a child in Disneyland kasi ako'y frustrated chef, frustrated cook. Jam Melchor, tuturuan mo ako. Sige. Ami, Besa, were you there when I went to Purple Yam in Malate?
No,
Yes.
but I heard about it and all the details were transmitted to me. I was in New York.
Hahanapin ko yung mga letrato. Nako, linitratuhan ko yung lugar mo kasi magandang lumang bahay, parang yung mga bahay namin sa Malabon. At pangalawa, ang pagkain, pinag-iisipan. Hindi basta, at ang sarap-sarap. Okay, excited na ako. Meron din tayong, so Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, New York. At meron tayong Cebuana, culinary heritage author and chronicler. Nako, parang ako pala ito, chronicler. Lahat database, lahat in-inventaryo, lahat ay, what do you call this, lahat ina-archive. Nakapending pa yung aming project ni Chef Jam, ang ating mapping ng ating culinary heritage. Last year, she launched her 7th book, Food and Love. I love this. Where can you get it? You tell us, please. She's known for her most celebrated book, Hikay. What does Hikay mean? The culinary heritage of Cebu. I hope you are safe in Cebu. ECQ, GCQ, MGCQ. Keep safe, please. So habang nasa loob kayo ng bahay, mag-share kayo ng recipe online. Good morning, Louella Eslao-Alix.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes.
Wow, Hikay. Ano po
We're
ibig sabihin
forever
ng Hikay?
ECQ in Cebu. We're forever ECQ here. So we have enough time for, for writing and for getting in touch with everybody else through online.
Okay, very good. Just like I asked Datu Shariff earlier to tell us more about himself, although I have all your CVs and I've read about you, but gusto ko po manggaling sa inyo. And then I'll go back to Louella and Ami because I failed to ask them. I was too talkative. O sige, Miss Louella, could you tell us more
Let's-
about your being an author, 7 books already? Yes.
Let's start with the word hikay. Hikay is there's one word for preparing food. One word to describe. So when you say, when somebody says, pauli ko kay maghikay og panihapon, I'm going home, I will prepare supper. Hikay, one word for preparing food. So if you
hikay is not kaon. Hikay
no,
is eat.
hikay is to prepare
prepare.
food. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a verb. It's a verb.
Okay, and people, and that's a regular word that people always use.
Yes. So then you don't have to say, I'm going to cook. Just say, maghikay ko. Yeah.
Maghikay. So, pagkakain na ako, mahaba tong ating webinar kasi medyo 5 minutes late ako, 4 minutes late. So, at mahaba, napaka-interesting. Pag sabihin ko sa aking Ilonggo cook na taga-Oton, kilala ni Luth Camiña si Lorna. Anyway, hikay. Ay, kaya lang Cebuano pala, Ilonggo pala siya. Iba yung sa akin. Okay.
The seven books were actually mostly histories of towns and cities in Cebu and churches, the old churches of Cebu. But sometime in 2014, the University of San Carlos commissioned me to write about the culinary heritage of Cebu. Because the priests discovered that there's none. If you want to read about how and why Cebu eats a certain way or why we do this to our food, there's no book. And so I was commissioned to write by the University of San Carlos to write hikay. And from then on, it has been a life. It has become my life passion now to talk about why we cook and why we eat and why we do things.
May I borrow your idea? Because I don't think there's a culinary book on antique or Kinaraya cuisine. And perhaps you can guide us on how you did yours, and Luth Camiña, my friend from Iloilo, can also help me. But there are many culinary experts. We have the owners of Alpas. That's a great restaurant in one of our towns in Antique. Marlene Liao also, who owns a hotel, has good cooks. She cooks well herself. Ang daming masasarap. Anyway, so let me, before I introduce Arvin and Luth, I'll just ask Louella. Before Louella, it was Ami, who I failed to ask her to tell us more about Purple Yam and the work she does in New York. Because I asked Chef Jam, Datu Shariff, Ami, it was a banter on a restaurant. And then after Ami, we proceed with Luth and with Mr. Villalon. Ami, yes.
Yeah, actually, we're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary of being in the restaurant industry here in New York. Ganun na kami katanda. We started in 1995 in Soho, called Sandrion. So, and then it was a difficult journey, because there was no social media at that time, and people didn't know what Filipino food was. They would come in and think it's Thai or Japanese. And when we would say Filipino, sorry, they'd walk out disappointed. But we made it, And then in 2006, we came out with Memories of Philippine Kitchens. And that's when really the journey of going back to the Philippines and looking at our heritage. And I discovered at that time that there was no way we could move our careers or our profession forward unless we went home and discovered the real palate, the real flavors of the Philippines.
Very good. After this webinar today, before noontime, may we request all of you to list all your writings, articles, books, publications, and where it's available. If it's online, that's great. If it's for sale in bookstores in the Philippines, let us know so we can patronize everything you've written in all these years, if not decades. Kanina binanggit ni Miss Louella yung Cebuano word, right? Hikay, correct? Sa amin, pag-prepare food ay maraha ako pagkaon. So sa inyo, hikay. Ako, maraha ako pagkaon. Prepare the food. Okay. Now, closer to home, my second home in Iloilo. I love her heritage home. Balay nga Bato. And if I may claim a bit of her big success, I gave her the idea to open her home and her culinary talent to the public so that others may share and may relish it, and to promote the arts and crafts of the region, and to taste her delicious, simple home cooking of indigenous cuisine. My dear friend, I'm so proud of what you've done of your home. Nako, parang taga dyan ako. Gusto ko makita. By the river yan at ang ganda. By the river na, heritage home pa, culinary, heritage, indigenous cuisine, at organic yung kanyang cooking. Ayan, Luth Camiña. Hello.
Hi, ma'am. So nice
Mayad
to
nga
see
aga.
you
Mayad
again.
nga aga.
Mayong aga. You're one of the pillars of Camiña Balay nga Bato with your inspiration and your instruction. We opened to the public in 2011, ma'am.
You're so funny. Wag naman sabihin instruction. O parang ano. Ay, nakakatawa
Inspiration
ka.
combined. Yeah, so we want to be remembered as keepers of tradition. So from our home to our table. So our tablescape is defined by our environment. So it was so easy for us to come up with our culinary heritage cuisine at the restaurant of the Avancenia Camiña Balay nga Bato.
Sana makita nila lahat. Naku, Luth,
Yes,
nakikita
I
ko
have
sa
invited.
art ko. Oh, tika, lahat kayo, if you have restaurants and hotels and even online services, sabihin nyo. Para, kasi we'll post this on Facebook forever para mabalikan nila. O sige, sinabi na ni Miss Amy, we don't have to fly to New York to taste her cooking sa Brooklyn. O dito sa Nakpil Corner, Bocobo. Ayan, mag-order na ako. Tapos, i-post ko sa Facebook ko kung ano yung online number or email address sa order. O Luth Camiña, hindi naman lahat nakakaalam na. Alam mo, marami pa rin hindi may alam, maski sikat na sikat ka na, libo-libo ang tao dyan, ha? O, Arevalo District, ano yung exact address? Balay nga Camiña, Balay nga Bato, Luth?
Arevalo, Iloilo City. Yes po.
Ganun kasimple.
Ganun.
Wala ka pang social media kasi nga,
I
hindi raw
have,
siya
ma'am.
social.
I have, ma'am.
Meron na, o sige.
Yes po.
Hanapin ka namin, Balay nga Bato, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Balay
Yes.
Camiña.
Supported by your
Okay.
inspiration again, we have a big urban garden at the back of the house.
Wow! Ang dami ko naman
13 vegetables.
Ay,
13
very good.
vegetables.
Naku, mukhang may part 2 ito, ha? Ito,
Yes,
si Nenny okay. Ang dami niya. Okay, marami. Si Chair Nenny of the National Book Board. O, yan, sabi niya dito, very interesting session. Ayan. O, Nenny Santa Romana. Okay, and that, before I read all the Facebook messages, introduction pa lang nga ito. With the NCCA, the National Commission on Culture and Arts, is one of our partners, supporters in the in chronicling, documenting, and preserving tangible and intangible heritage. Can I plug Dayaw, our 5-year-old series on tangible and intangible heritage? Ano na yan icon na yan inaantay, pinapanood. Paki-upload naman natin sa NCCA website, sa Facebook, sa YouTube, para palagi nang mapanood, pati sa aking YouTube channel. and even in the ANC YouTube channel. I hope it's still available. So we have the National Commission on Culture and Arts with Arvin Villalon, who has facilitated cultural mapping. Nako, alam ko na. Chef Jam, after this, kayo na ni Mr. Villalon, can we embark on this cultural mapping focusing on culinary heritage? Yes. May we hear po from Mr. Villalon of the NCCA.
Good morning, Deputy Speaker.
Hi.
For having me here. At we are so delighted that you are embarking on this project. No? Ang ganda nung ginagawa niyo po sa maraming mga bagay like Dayaw, as you mentioned. And now this time, this is a tangible support in terms of cultural mapping project. We had wonderful data with you when we had our cultural mapping in Antique. You remember? And
Yes.
yes, and it's still unfinished, no, because of the COVID. But we have so much to discover in terms of your heritage, particularly the culinary heritage. Ang dami-dami sa buong bansa. Kaya pag nagtataka Senator, Deputy Speaker, na ang daming pwedeng makuha pa ng mga resources na.
Dalawang tanong po. Sabi po nyo, unfinished pa yung cultural mapping sa Antique. Tell me, what will it take to finish it? And let's already complete the results so we can post it on a blog or post it online or even have a hard copy book. Is that possible, Mr. Villalon?
Yeah. Yung ano sa Antique, we had our the mapping for the province, the essentials, that's finished. But in terms of each town, because each town is just so rich that you have to each town a chance to speak out their own respective heritage. So ngayon, dahil sa COVID, ma'am, ang ginagawa namin ngayon is we're embarking on a mapping that is online also. We cannot stop doing the research.
We can do it online, yes. Very good.
Have to do our training wherein we can, like this platform wherein we train our local culture and arts council, our heritage experts on the framework of mapping itself. So lalong-lalo na dito sa cuisine, Ma'am Lauren, ano? At ngayon we're doing a research at alam niyo ba, ang isa sa mga binalikan daw ng mga Pilipino na yung panahon na ito is their traditional cuisine. Kasi hindi sila makapunta sa mga restaurants or fast foods. So there was no other way but to learn. At it was quite an opportunity. I spoke to an Ivatan from Batanes at sinabi niya, my children are forced to learn about our cuisine. Not
Uy,
only
masarap ang Ivatan cuisine, ha? When I went to Batanes, ano yung root crop na palagi nilang ginagamit sa Batanes?
Yung meron silang iba-iba po na meron silang parang
Ivud ba? There's a name. Is it Ivud?
Yes, Ivud. Yes. Yung parang ubod, meron din pong meron din pong talagang root crop na it's a spectrum of root crops. Okay. At sabi ng mga Ivatan, because of the COVID, they're going back not only in terms of the cuisine, but also in terms of production, in terms of the fishing. Because the fishes are, because hindi sila overfished ngayon. So ang ganda ng mga points nila that the children now are learning their traditional cuisine.
Very good. After this, I have two requests from our panelists and guests today. First, to submit all their articles and publications, listings, and where it's available, and to post it online if it's for free. But if your books are for sale, we completely understand. Just tell us where to purchase it. Second, could we have a separate meeting, not online like this, with Mr. Villalon of the NCCA and Chef Jam of the Culinary Heritage Movement and Slow Food, so that we can start the timeline and what to do for our cultural mapping with the NCCA with regards to culinary heritage. Because yung ginagawa ko for culture in general, yan na yung Dayaw. Pero gagawa po tayo ng culinary database and archiving cultural mapping for culinary heritage. If it's okay with you, Mr. Villalon. Arvin.
I think it's about time, ma'am, especially we can really push it forward. We can have our own inscription for the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. Wala pa tayong entry. Ang dami nating cultural...
Wala pa tayo.
Wala pa.
So, very good. So all the research already available, and what we will do in NCCA for cultural mapping of food can be our entry. Sige,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later. So, may I just ask a simple, basic question of Chef Jam Melchor to tell us about the mission, the vision, bakit kailangan i-promote, i-preserve ang Philippine cuisine? Bakit kailangan malaman yung ating mga tradisyonal at mga heirloom na produkto? Yan ang ating Chef Jam na ang kanyang advocacy, just like all of you today and all of us, is really preservation of culinary heritage. Ano ba yung mga tinatawag na heritage food? At ano ba yung mga registered under the Arc of Taste? Ano ba tong Arc of Taste? At pag hindi ka registered dyan, paano na yan? At tinatanong ng mga tao, ano ba yung mga heirloom food? Ito ba'y mas nutritious o baka naman ito yung mas mahal? Ayan. Yung mga terms lang na ito, i-clarify natin, Chef Jam. Thank you.
Okay. Ko Lauren, thank you for the opportunity. Alam ko na palalim niyo na po yung discussion mag-umpisa sa farmers, yung permaculture hanggang ngayon. Talagang ang trend natin is towards culinary preservation. Napaka-importante po na pinag-uusapan natin ng culinary heritage dahil dapat maintindihan ng mga Pilipino na ang Filipino food will always be part of our culture. Hindi lang ito pantawid gutom, but it's definitely part of our identity as Filipinos. Next slide, please. So continuing the discussion last week, ang Arc of Taste po kami sa Slow Food ay nagko-compile kami ng iba't ibang heirloom ingredients, produce, or cooking practices from all over the world. Currently, ang laman ng Arc of Taste archive namin is 5,000 plus species, which is actually available online. Sa Philippines, ang next slide please, ang current na available is 64 at the moment. Meron kaming mga currently na nilinominate, pero hindi pa siya dumaan dun sa approval body ng Slow Food. Basically, ang goal ng Arc of Taste is again to promote heirloom species, varieties, and of course, preserve our local biodiversity. Naniniwala kami na kapag ang isang pagkain ay hindi na pinag-uusapan, hindi na tinatanim, mamamatay ito at tuluyang mawawala. That's why we encourage everybody to nominate and to talk about, use, or plant, continuously use, plant, and eat this specific heirloom species. I've cited some examples na makikita ninyo doon sa online database. First is pili, which is, of course, makikita lang yan dito sa Pilipinas. Next, we have kiniing. Ito yung dried meat, preserved meat sa Cordillera. Next, merong sinarapan. Ito yung seafood na parang dulong na maliliit, which is found in Bicol. Next, of course, turmeric. Turmeric as a superfood, hindi mawawala. Part of my work now, nung nag-umpisa na po itong usapin natin, dahil nag-promise ako sa inyo, Kong Lauren, na ginagawa ko yung rationale nung ating gustong mangyari dun sa food mapping. Next slide, please. Is of course, gusto sana natin na ma-recognize ang gastronomy and Philippine culinary arts as an integral form and part of the national arts. Kasi nakakalimutan natin na theater, film, dance, song, yun lang lagi ang pinag-uusapan. Pero naiiwanan ang gastronomy at ang culinary arts, ang Philippine culinary arts. Of course, next is include and recognize Philippine culinary heritage as to be part of the national heritage.
Na-excite ako dyan. I'll interrupt muna ha. Along with NCCA, kung wala pa to sa aming ginawang Heritage Act, I will do a stand-alone bill on Philippine culinary heritage because alam ko this is part of the proclamation 439. Pero
Yes.
baka kailangan ng focus for the preservation, conservation, documentation, promotion of Philippine culinary arts and heritage, and to plant more trees, flowers, food, pertaining to the preservation of our culinary arts. Tama ba yon? Ayan, you help me, ha? Very
Yes
good.
po. So ito po yung
Okay.
isa sa mga talagang gusto kong isulong on top of the creation of the new committee under the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Dahil ito pong committee na to ay isang hahawak pagdating sa usapin ng gastronomy ng Philippines. At di ba po na isabatas ang Filipino Food Month na sinulong namin noong 2018 as per Proclamation 469, ang Filipino Food Month, wala pong committee na humahawak under sa National Commission for Culture and the Arts. That's why we need to convene this commission para magkaroon ng technical working group na hahawak doon sa food mapping project na gusto nating isulong. Next slide. Yung proposed po na committee na ito at the moment talagang wala pa kasi for the past 2 years na sineselebrate yung Filipino Food Month every April, talagang hirap po akong humagilap ng suporta sa bawat opisina ng Department of Agriculture and NCCA. Kaya gusto ko pong magkaroon sana through your expertise kung papaano magkaroon ng talagang solid na support itong ating mga panukala or mga plano para sa gastronomy and preservation of Philippine culinary heritage. Dahil importante po na part or maging part ng institusyon natin ang gastronomy. Yun nga po, ang nire-recognize lang lagi is yung 7 forms of art which is patterned after the West. Eh hindi naman tayo West. Of course, meron tayong sarili nating mga tradisyon na dapat rin nating i-celebrate, intangible man to or tangible. Kailangan i-celebrate lahat. At salamat sa mga kasama po natin na talagang nire-respeto ko. Kasi yung mga work na ginawa nila, yung pag-archive, pagdodocument, napaka-importante sa pagpapalakas nitong pagtawag natin para mabuo itong call towards preservation of culinary heritage.
Very good. Chef Jam, natutuwa ako sa iyo, ha, pero maski third time mo na sa ating programa, wag kang bibitaw, ha. Tutulong ka sa akin kasama ni Tala, Chief of Staff ko, at ni Sherry. Kaya lang may sakit yata si Sherry ngayon, she's not online, and may other staff, because we will do it just like I brought the Philippines back to the Venice Biennale after 51 years of absence from 1964 to 2015 with the support of the National Commission on Culture and Arts during the time of Chair June De Leon, and we had Patrick Flores and Ria Brihino. Chef Jam, you will help me map Philippine culinary arts and heritage. Number 1, I will file a stand-alone bill. Ito, ka-text ko na habang tayo yung nag-webinar, nagatrabaho din ako in legislation. So you will help us draft the bill. Second, we will do Mr. Arvin Villalon with the NCCA, not just Antique, but nationwide culinary mapping. Okay, I will make sure that it is done even during these times of COVID. We can do it virtually. And this group now, please, since you're Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, we have the Ilonggos, we have the Cebuanos, we have our brother Muslims, we have Ami Besa, who knows Cordillera food as well, and those in Luzon. So ako sa Kinaray food. So marami. So you will help us. You just put the work together, meron na tayong mapping preliminarily. Now, gusto kong malaman ang Muslim culinary heritage. This boy was a baby when I knew him. Nako, ano ba yan? Because his uncle, Butch Raquel, is a colleague of mine. And my God, yeah, I used to pinch his cheeks. Now he's a renowned chef promoting Philippine culture. Tell us more about, do we call it Moro food, Datu? Moro food ba ang tamang politically correct term? How do you say it?
Sure. Moro food is one way of looking at it. But you can also use the term the food of Muslim Mindanao as well. Because
Yeah.
Moro food, the term Moro has political connotations, especially nowadays. That we have the Bangsamoro entity, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. So, when talking about this food, I would like to share with everyone that the food of Muslim Mindanao goes beyond the borders of BARM. Simply because we do have Moros outside Bangsamoro, the political entity. So next slide, please, if we can take a look at the map. Next, please. Okay, so I hope it's legible. But anyway, you'll see there, for instance, in the Davao region, the ethno-linguistic group called Kaagan are actually Muslims. So if you look at Sheikh Salamat Hashim's, Salamat Hashim was the founder of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and he was my uncle as well. Salamat Hashim's Bangsamoro Mujahid, he included the Kaagans ethno-linguistic group as part of the Bangsamoro, as part of the Moro nationality. Now, so the Kaagans, they live mostly in the Davao area. Outside Bangsamoro, you would also have Magindanaons as well. So the Empire Province, so what used to be the Empire Province of Cotabato, which is now several provinces. So you have Maguindanao, you have Sultan Kudarat, North Cotabato. That's where you find the Magindanaons. Okay. Up north, you would have the Maranaos of Lanao del Sur and Lanao del Norte in the Rano region. This is the region surrounding the lake, the largest lake in Mindanao. In between the Maranaos and the Maguindanaons is an ethno-linguistic group called the Iranon. So they share a similar language with us, similar customs, and similar food as well. So in the Zamboanga Peninsula, we would have the Tausugs from the Sulu archipelago. So aside from the Tausugs, we also have the Yakans of Basilan. We also have the Jama Mapun, the Bajau of the islands as well. So what's noteworthy about looking at these ethno-linguistic groups is that they go beyond the borders of Mindanao. Okay, so if we look at Palawan, we have Moros or Muslim Filipinos in Palawan as well, especially in the southern parts, right? And then even if you go farther south, down to present-day Malaysia, in Sabah, okay, you would have the Orang Suluk or the Tausugs and the Bajaus as well. So even farther than Sabah, in different parts of the Kalimantan province in Borneo, in Indonesia, you would find Bajaus as well. So that's the beauty about it. When you talk about Muslim Filipinos or Moros, you're talking about the food of the region of Southeast Asia. So it's not limited to the locality. Next slide, please. When talking about the food, I think it's very important to take a look at ingredients. So I'm very, very glad that we have the opportunity to discuss these things with Ami, with Jam, who's from the Kapampangan side of things. We have the Deputy Speaker, Representative Legarda, from the Kinaraya side of things. Hiligaynon Cebuano, and I think if memory serves correct, Sir Arvin is from Davao, right? So we have the non Muslim side of Mindanao as well. So when we talk about the different ingredients, let's start with the first. No, I wasn't able to put the Kapampangan word, but what we know in English as lemongrass is salay in Maguindanao. It's bawing in Maranao, seray in Bahasa Melayu and Bahasa Indonesia, tanglad in Tagalog, and sale if I'm in Kapampangan. So this is one of the characteristic ingredients that's used across the different ethno-linguistic groups of Muslim Mindanao.
Interrupt lang ako, Datu Shariff. Ako'y nagtatanim ng tanglad at ang dali-daling itanim ng tanglad. Kaya sa mga maski walang farm at walang garden, maliit na pasok lang, mabubuhay ang tanglad. O sige, continue. Natutuwa ako dahil madalas ako uminom ng tanglad. Yung aking tanim na tanglad ay hina-harvest ko lang sa umaga, hinuugasan, pinapakuluan, meron na akong tanglad juice, di ba? Hindi ka kailangan pumunta sa grocery o supermarket na bumili ng mga mamahaling mga bottled o delata na may artificial na mga preservatives. O sige, continue. Yang luyang dilaw, yan yung tinatawag na turmeric. O, sige ha.
Absolutely.
So,
So,
kung mapapakita ko lang sa inyo, ito po, luyang dilaw. Ito ay tanim ko rin sa paso. At maganda ang itsura ng luyang dilaw. Dekorasyon po yan sa bahay. Ay, saan naglagay ako? Teka, magpapatawag ako ng luyang dilaw. At ito pa ay tuwing umaga ay iniinom ko. Ayun. See, continue. Sorry, sumisingit ako, Datu Shariff.
no, I'm glad that you mentioned it. We're very fortunate to be in this part of the world where salay or tanglad and luyang dilaw can grow in pots, even partially indoors. So, as you mentioned, turmeric is known as kalawag to the Maguindanao and Maranao. It's also known as dulaw to the other ethno-linguistic groups. It's known as luyang dilaw in Tagalog, kunyit in Bahasa Melayu and Bahasa Indonesia. So you mentioned earlier that a lot of the foods are yellow. I think you would be referring to Marawi, to the Lanao region, where the deputy speaker is also known as Bay Alabi. So we would use this a lot as well in the different ethno-linguistic groups, okay? So it's used as a flavoring and as a coloring. The great thing about kalawag is that it also has a ritualistic significance. So when we do our pre-Islamic rituals, yellow has it's very significant. No? It plays a vital role in our ethnography. So kalawag would play a part in that. So we color our rice cakes, we color our rice with these things. So again, kalawag is a very special ingredient. So now on to langkawas. Langkawas is used among the Maguindanaoans in flavoring our dishes, especially in the dish we call tinapayan. It's known as lengkuas in Bahasa Melayu in Bahasa Indonesia. It's known as langkuas in Bahasa Sug, in Sulu. It's known as tikwas in Maguindanao, tekowas in Maranao. So this as a spice, perhaps Chef Jam may have input on this as well. I assume that in the past, prior to all these other influences, the Filipinos, the different peoples in the country would actually use this. So it's not known to a lot of people, but if you go to, say, the Negrense or the Ilonggo areas, in their sinamak, they would put this as well. So I think it's great that in some areas of the Philippines, certain ingredients are still being used. So likewise for other ingredients such as bawang, although bawang is used everywhere else, So bawang or bawang puti in Malaysia, Indonesia, lasuna at kapun in Basa na Maranao. We also use sili as well. Okay, so the siling labuyo that people know of.
Ako, nagtatanim din ako niyan. I-interrupt na naman ako sa'yo. Sana pala, alam mo, next time, dapat maraming pictures. Pa lahat ng sinasabi mo, papakita ko, promise. Ang dami kong tanim na siling labuyo. Alam mo, ang dali-dali ng siling labuyo. Ang mga ibon lang ang nagtatanim para sa akin. Dala ng ibon, uusbong sa lupa, may siling labuyo ka na. Ayan, sige, continue.
And well, the great thing about the sili is that you can eat the leaves as well, right? So the sili is an introduction because of the Colombian exchange. So if you look at the Maguindanaon term for it, it's called kasila. So kasila was actually the term used by the Maguindanaons for the Spaniards. So it was, I don't know when exactly, where there aren't any records as to when it arrived on the shores of Maguindanao. Or Lanao. But it's now...
Ang sili pala ay hindi indigenous, hindi sa atin. Yan ay introduced species.
Yes, it is introduced. It came with the Spaniards. It would be interesting to see what the cuisine was like of Muslim Mindanao and of other areas, even in Malaysia and Indonesia, without the sili. Because when you talk about the perception is of a lot of people is that, and it's not limited to those cuisines. Even if you go to Bicol, for instance, the perception is that it's hot. Because of the sili. So it would be really, really interesting to at least imagine what the food was like prior to the introduction of sili. Okay?
Sinabi mo, Datu Shariff, na yung leaves ng siling labuyo ay kinakain?
Oh yeah, so we have the talbo, the dahon, sili, right? So when people do tinolas and and different dishes as well.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
correct.
it's really I like the taste because it's a little astringent and a little bitter.
Okay.
So that's right. Moving on to the other ingredients, we have luya. Okay, or in Maranao it's called luya pagirisan. Jahe, bahasa Indonesia, halia, bahasa Malaysia. Luya in Hiligaynon. So this luya, a few months ago, I was in Buluan in Maguindanao, and we discovered we didn't discover, but I was given this luya, a different variety of it, which in Maguindanao is known as makumbang. So this is luya, but it's really, really, really red. No, it's not lang kawas. It's just luya, and it's used for medicinal purposes. So I think what I'm trying to say is that among these things, no, even with the lemongrass, even with garlic and all these things, there are different varieties as well. Okay, it's not just you say bawang, it's bawang. If you say luya, it's luya. There are different varieties that we use all over. Okay. Next up is something that's...
Now, yung luya mo, it's not the regular ginger, yung luyang puti, hindi ba? That's what you're referring to, right?
That's right. So in Maguindanao, there are two kinds. There's luya, and then there's gingerbread officinale, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's gingerbread officinale variety rubrum, which is the really, really red one. So that's what we call makumbang. Now, the following one is really, really special because citrus is another thing that in Muslim Mindanao we use a lot of. Okay, so I like talking about this because for the most part in Luzon people have forgotten about it. So in Maguindanao we call it...
Which is that? Anong tawag sa Tagalog?
In Tagalog it's called kabuyaw. In Maguindanao, it's Basa na Maguindanao, it's called kabuling. In Basa Maranao, it's called marinaut. In Bahasa Indonesia, it's called jeruk purut. Bahasa Melayu.
Ano yun? Hindi ako familiar masyado sa halamang yan.
So it's if you're familiar with Thai food, if you're into Thai cuisine.
Yes, of course, Thai food, yes.
You would call this makrut. Okay, so it's a lime with
Ito ba yung kaffir? I have kaffir lime.
That's what it is. That's what it is. So
meron akong kaffir lime. Ang kinakain dyan, yung dahon, oo.
Right. So the kaffir lime, the leaves are used in other cuisines, no, but not used in the cuisines of Muslim Mindanao. We use the fruit. Okay. So it's in Sulu, it's also called something else. So the good thing about it is that it's a normal thing in Mindanao and in Sulu and in Lanao. Okay, so the people of Luzon, for the most part, have forgotten about it. But in our areas, it's still used. So it's used as a condiment. People squeeze it in their kinilaw. People squeeze it in their grilled fish and all these things. Okay, and then lastly, I would like to share this ingredient. It's not extensively used. As a matter of fact, it's only the Maranaos who use it. It's what they call kume. So kume is actually the cassia leaf. So it imparts a cinnamon profile to dishes.
Anong tawag dyan sa Tagalog o sa English?
Okay, in English it's cassia. So it's like cinnamon. It's related to cinnamon.
Cinnamon? Ano kaya yung yun ang wala yata ako, halaman na cinnamon.
Okay. These are trees actually. They grow very
I will check.
They have a lot of these in Campo.
Okay, I hate to interrupt you. Pero konektado ito kasi ayan, ito yung aking tanim. Ayan. Kasi okay, mahaba tong ating show. Ayan. Ito po, tinutulungan ko si Datu Shariff sa kanyang paliwanag kasi yung cards mo ay salita. Importante, visual. Ito po ay isa sa aking maraming tanim na luyang dilaw. Ito po ay turmeric. At yung mga ibang mga salita ay galing kay Datu Shariff. Nandyan po. Sandali, isa pa ito. Ito po ang aking tanim na
Wow. Yeah.
tanglad. This is lemongrass. Ayan, ang bango-bango. O sige, yan ang background ko. Patuloy, Datu Shariff. Para lang malaman ng tao, ito po ay hindi mahirap itanim. Maski na plastic na paso na recycled, maski na lumang paso na pinangregalo sa akin, ito po, sa umaga po ay pinipitas ko ito, inuugasan, pinapakuluan ilan, tas masarap. Yan, ang iniinom ko po ngayon ay luyang dilaw. O sige, mamaya forest na ako dito. Kung napapansin nyo, yung sa likod ko, may ibig sabihin yan. Sansevieria. It's not a very pretty plant, pero maganda rin. You grow on it. It grows on you. Kasi po oxygen plant. Mahal naman po bumili ng air cleaner, air purifier. Natural po yan. Kung saan ako nagtatrabaho, kung saan ako natutulog, meron po akong katabi na ako lang nag-invento ng tawag kong oxygen plant. It's called mother-in-law's tongue. Bakit kaya, Luth? Kasi matalas yung dila. Hindi naman maganda yan sa mother-in-law or Sansevieria. Okay, Datu Shariff, continue. We'll go to Ami Besa after you.
It's great that you have the illustration of the turmeric. I'd like to share as well, before we go back to Kalingag, that people, the Maguindanaons use its leaves also. So in Maguindanaon cuisine, the leaves of the turmeric.
Ito yung cinnamon leaves. Okay,
No,
cinnamon
of the turmeric. So while they're still young, they're tied into a knot and put into a dish with coconut milk and shells. So it's not only the Malaysians, Indonesians who do this, but the Maguindanaons as well. So
itong aking dahon ng the leaves of the turmeric, ang iniinom ko lang yung turmeric. So ito pala kinakain din.
Yes, and it imparts a very, very great flavor, no? So it's imagine turmeric. Not at all. And it's
you have to share the recipe with me after this. Hindi ko alam na kinakain yan.
Yeah, it's a muted turmeric flavor, no? So it's really delicious. So if you're familiar with randang of the Minangkabau in Indonesia, this is one of the ingredients that they use. They slice it into a chiffonade of it. So back to kame or kalingag. The Maranaos use it as a flavoring agent, no? So aside from cinnamon, they also use. So I think without the Spanish influence, I think they're the only ethnolinguistic group whose food has a cinnamon profile because of this kame or kalingag. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of the dishes, we were talking about the ingredients earlier. I'd just like to show how we really are all related to each other. In Tagalog, it's called ginataan. In Bisaya, it can be called tinunuan. I don't know if that's the same case in Cebu, but in the Bisayans among Mindanao call it tinunuan. In Maguindanaon, we call it pinamilit. In Bahasa Melayu, Bahasa Indonesia, it's called gulay. In Lanao, it's called pinjalokan. So cooked in gata. Okay, so you have coconut milk. Okay, so anything with coconut milk is called these things. So it's a common denominator, so to speak, among the different ethnolinguistic groups across the region. Next slide, please. So whenever I talk about the cuisines of Muslim Mindanao, I always like to share with people the spectrum of things. So there's white, there's brown, and there's black. I think it's it's only in the cuisines of Muslim Mindanao wherein we see the spectrum, no? So let me elucidate. When we speak of coconuts or coconut meat or nyog, normally people just use the coconut milk, okay? Or the meat. It's used in dessert applications outside Muslim Mindanao, pero on its own, no? But sorry, for dessert applications. Now, in Muslim Mindanao, among the Maranaos, it's used as an ingredient itself without being squeezed, okay? And that's what they call piaparan. So papar, they use the coconut. Now, if we roast it, okay, it becomes what the Maguindanaons call palapa. It's what the Maranaos called papar. It's what the Tausugs called bubuk. We'll show the matrix later on. No? But the great thing about it is that when it's roasted and when spices are added to it, it changes the flavor profile completely. Okay? And it even extends the shelf life. So this palapa or palapa ng Maguindanaon or what the Kaagans called tinu can be stored for months. Okay? Maybe even actually even over a year. So when talking about sources of flavor for people, so instead of some things are perishable, right? But this number one, it's plant based. Second, it's not very expensive. Third, it's easy to store. It has a long shelf life. This palapa would be a great addition to anyone's repertoire. Now, lastly, in that spectrum is the sinunog lahing or the burnt coconut. Okay, sinunog lahing forms the base for what the Tausugs called pamapaitum. Now, pamapaitum, this is the main ingredient in kalia, in chulaitum, and pianggang. Now, others may argue that the kulawo and the tinutungan of Quezon and Bicol are burnt. Yes, they are, but only to a certain extent. Okay, it's not burnt completely. In contrast to that of the Tausug, which is burnt as in it becomes black. No, so this, in my opinion, could be the characteristic or unique attribute of the cuisines of Muslim Mindanao put together. Is that we use the coconut. Okay, we use the whole spectrum of it, from fresh, okay, on its own, the milk. We use it roasted. We use it burnt. Next slide, please. So here's just a matrix of sorts among the different ethno-linguistic
May
groups.
I request you, Datu Shariff, if I'm not asking too much, to put pictures, not now, later on, that we can have we can post on Facebook so that people can visualize what we're talking about, right?
Right. Thank you for the input. Yeah, it's kind of tough to visualize these things, but for those who are familiar with the flavors, the cuisines of Muslim Mindanao is not only retinal delight, no, because of the black, yellow, and white. It's also a completely sensory experience. Okay, because
maybe we can have I think we can have a Dayaw series, so it's visual, not just a webinar on a culinary heritage. So Dayaw of Muslim Mindanao or Moro food. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go with that. Sige. But this is great what you're doing. This is already mapping actually. Arvin, let's help him by providing, NCCA has a wealth of pictures and video. Itong basic research ni Datu Shariff, lagyan lang natin ng video at pictures. And then I can also do a Dayaw documentation of file video since we cannot fly there. And then we can do this for the other regions as well. Okay, proceed please. Interesting.
Yeah, so we look at the different ethno-linguistic groups, and then we look at the ingredients. So fundamentally, the cuisines of Muslim Mindanao, I'd like to share, are just different permutations, okay, of the ingredients that everybody else uses, okay, in the region. So if you look at, most people use coconut, most people use, some people use galangal, most people use ginger, everybody uses onion and garlic. So the cuisines that we have there are just permutations of this. They're just combinations, no? And then it's how we apply them that make them unique. Okay, it's how the Tausugs innovated the use of coconut that make their food unique. It's how the Maguindanaons innovated. It's how they developed, the predilection for the roasted coconut flavor that makes, that forms part of their identity. Yeah. So that's it for me. Next slide, last slide, please. Okay, so this is shukran. So in Muslim Mindanao, a different alphabet is used. So this is the Arabic word for thank you, which is understood by the different ethno-linguistic groups. Thank you very much.
Oh, I was waiting for more video. I'm sorry. That's it.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. Are you in Mindanao now?
No. I'm in Manila, as a matter of fact. I haven't been
Okay.
able to fly. Yeah.
Let's be very, very careful because COVID is rising. But in the meantime, let's talk positive. Let's talk about what we can do during lockdown. Let's plant trees, vegetables, herbs, whatever we can do, even on recycled pots. And to tell us more from Mindanao, we proceed now to Brooklyn, New York. 11 na ng gabi. Okay, Miss Ami Besa, my favorite purple yam. Tell us more about Purple Yam and how it integrates the most underused, unused, or even the regularly used produce of our country. But magaling kang anong tawag sa inyo? Innovator? Kayo ay creative people? You're considered artists because the ingredients that are grown here, you're able to utilize in New York, in the East Coast, and you consciously include this in your dishes, and you even tell them what it is, where you source it, all of that. So, binibigyan nyo ng kahulugan at ng ibig sabihin ang pagkain. Tama ba ako, Miss Ami Besa?
Salamat for
Parang
stating
kinukurate
that.
nyo ang pagkain nyo, kinukurate nyo ang mga sourcing nyo, ang pagkain nyo, at kayo isa sa mga pinakaumpisa na nagbigay talaga ng kahalagahan sa ating kabihasnan, sa ating pagkain. Ayan. Miss Ami Besa, tell us more about your advocacy for Filipino cuisine and for even smallholder farmers, for producers, smallholder producers. I am a weekend farmer. Maybe not weekend. I'm a smallholder farmer. Yung ba ang tawag doon? Yun ang advocacy mo, di ba, Ami?
Well, nag-umpisa kami dito sa, sa Amerika, ganun na influence na kami ni Alice Waters. Noong mga 1980s pa, nag-uumpisa na kami noon eh. Pina-follow na namin yung mga farms, right? Dito sa Amerika. Ngayon, ang ginagawa namin, in-apply namin lahat yon, yung pagmamahal sa yung pagkain. Kasi ginawa ng mga Amerikano yun dito, yung tinatawag nilang New American Cuisine. So ngayon, ganun naman ang ginawa namin for Filipino and also Southeast Asian dishes, right? Kasi tayo, we always look to the West. We never look at our Southeast Asian neighbors that, we really have a lot in common with. So I think what I can just say is that we are perpetual students. We always want to learn. Every cooking experience is a learning experience. And then all the customers that come in, yun ang inumpisahan kong research nung nakakuha kami ng book contract to do Memories of Philippine Kitchens. The first thing I did was to start asking all the Filipinos that came into the restaurant and said, what are your memories of childhood food? Because yun ang nag-heart, yun ang nag-hit home talaga, yung pagkain nung bata ka. So, ako, I grew up in Manila and my parents were from my father's from Tarlac and my mother's from Zambales. So, central and northern Luzon. And then my husband is from Bicol, so southern Luzon. So basically, nung nag-umpisa kami sa Sandrion in 1995 sa Soho in Manhattan, the Filipino food that we showcased was really Luzon-based. Kasi talagang based on our memories of childhood food. But then, as we grew older in the restaurant industry, we realized nga na limited talaga ang scope mo, unless you go home to the home country. And then when so ito yung journey, no, from Manila to from Manila to New York to Manila, and then Manila back to New York. Umiikot talaga yan, And then along the way talaga, especially when in 2014, I started Purple Yam Malate dun sa childhood home namin sa Bocobo at Nakpil. My question was, paano ko gagawin ito? I decided early on that Malate was not going to be a reproduction of Brooklyn or New York. Because, the Filipino food has its own integrity. So ang unang-una kong ginawa talaga is I looked at for all the connections I had, lahat ng mga farmers and suppliers and everybody I knew who really knew about
Sandali,
food.
ang ganda nun. Ano yung letratong yun? Sandali, back.
That's my house.
Bakit
That's
iba
the
yung
Nakpil
Oh.
Bocobo.
Yan yung
Baka
pinuntahan
you
ko.
went there at night kaya hindi mo maalalang ganyan.
Hindi,
But-
I went lunchtime. I went 2 times.
I went lunchtime.
Lunch
Yeah.
and evening. Pero siguro dumiretso na ako sa gate at kumain na kaagad. Hindi ko napansin yung kagandahan. Napakagandang bahay, Ami.
It was made by one of the best architects ever.
Sino?
And I don't know, Luis Enriquez ba yan? Basta
sige,
anyway,
anyway.
that
Magre-reserve na ako next week. O sige, okay.
no, hindi pa pwedeng dine in So take out muna.
Sige,
So the
okay,
first thing when I started, I realized kasi what I just did was just start making a construct in my mind. How do you do this food? Okay, I had to be a little bit scientific because I don't want yung scattergun, right? So I started collecting all these ingredients. And then you start with ingredients, and then I realized that ingredients tasted different if they grew in one part of the country as in another part of the country. And that was really very obvious with the heirloom rice in the Cordilleras. You plant the same variety of rice in Ifugao and you grow it in Mountain Province, it will be different.
Yes.
So that's
What are these ingredients, Ami? Ano pa tong ingredients na madalas mong gamitin sa Amerika na sa Pilipinas mo natuklasan or indigenous Philippines, indigenous Philippine sources pero nabubuhay dyan? Ano yon?
We started using the heirloom rice from the Cordilleras. 2006. Yung Eighth Wonder, they were bringing in like 17 tons of about 6 or 7 varieties of heirloom rice. It was a hard sell, right? Kasi medyo, hindi ka sanay.
Galing pang Pilipinas. Galing pa dito.
Yes. When this photo this photo is when we did a tour of North America sponsored by the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Philippine DFA. They asked Romy and me and my team from Malate. I brought 2 chefs with me. And we brought about 50 ingredients from the Philippines shipped by diplomatic pouch by the DFA to 5 cities. 4 in the United States and 1 in Toronto, in Canada. And my contention was, if you want to taste Filipino food, you need to taste it with ingredients grown in our soil, our water, and from our air. Because nandoon ang lasa ng Pilipinas. Ito yung danggit, ng Balangay's Best, right? Sila, tinutulungan nila mga fishers.
Sa Pilipinas.
Yeah, alam mo
Oo.
Itong mga isda na itong dinadry nila, hindi na nila nilalagyan ng asin. Ha? Tapos lahat yan, mga organic yan, talagang malinis yan. Tapos ang pera na yan, bumabalik sa fishers. Ang pagbayad nila twice as much as the regular middlemen. Okay, next. Next slide. Okay, itong champurrado na ito, of course, Malagos, Mindanao chocolate. And we used ifugao rice with that. All these pictures, ito sa Seattle ito. Itong ginawa namin ito. Next slide. Ito naman, niluto namin sa Batulao Forest. No? Alam mo, Batulao Forest is, I think, the only remaining rainforest in Luzon. So it's privately owned.
In Batulao, in
Nasugbu there.
Okay.
Yeah, in Nasugbu. And what we did was we brought rice and we cooked with the ulasiman bato, or the pansit-pansitan that was foraged in the forest. Okay, next. Next. Okay. These are the different vinegars. I cannot emphasize enough how important vinegars are. If there's something that I would like to champion, it's to manufacture natural vinegars in the Philippines, because that we can ship to the United States. And I always showcase adobos cooked in different vinegars, because iba-iba yan. And I treat vinegars like wine, okay? Yung sukang Iloco na dark, yun ang ginagamit ko sa mga pork, or ginagamit ko sa beef. Tapos yung mga puti, mga sukang, paumbong, yun, pwede sa manok. Iba-iba yun eh. So,
ayun, ako,
yung mga,
iba pa naman yung storya natin ng mga suka. Sige, nanganganak ng ating topic. Sige. Yung
vinegars, actually, vinegars come also from a lot of palm trees. There are 3 major palm trees, buri, coconut buri, at saka kaong, paumbong, all the nipa, buri, all that. We should all preserve
ang vinegar ay galing sa buri, galing sa kaong. Anong isa?
Mga palm. There are 4 palms, right?
Yes.
Buri, coconut, buri, nipa, kaong. All of those give out sap. And that sap, you can turn into sugar before you let it ferment. Or if it starts fermenting, then you can make it into vinegar, wine, and lambanog, or vinegar. Okay, next slide. Okay, and I think ice creams.
Siniguelas,
ngayon
ako nakakita ng siniguelas ice cream.
Yun, inimbento nga ni Romy kasi merong mga hokote dito sa New York. Yun ang ciruelas or hokote, yun ang galing sa Mexico. Yun, kasi nakuha natin yan sa galleon trade. So, nung nakikita niya yung hokote, ginawa niyang jam, tapos ginawa niyang ice cream. So, nung umuwi kami for the Madrid Fusion, nakakuha kami ng ang sasarap na mga siniguelas from Dumaguete. Naku, ang sarap talaga. So, wild yun, organic. So, ginawa namin ice. Yun ang showcase namin sa Madrid Fusion. Tapos lahat-lahat, I think ice creams are a very easy and good way to showcase our fruits. All these fruits that we ignore, we can make them into jams and put them in ice creams. Okay, next.
May nagtanong sa akin kagabi, si Ambassador Tess de Vega sa Germany, dahil nakita niya yung aking post sa Instagram nung aking puno ng bignay. Sabi niya, meron din daw siyang puno ng bignay sa kanilang family farm sa Tarlac. Ano daw ang pwedeng gawin? Paano gawin ang bignay tea? Ako naman, hindi naman ako chef. Sabi ko, simple. Pag ripe na siya na deep red, i-pluck mo lang, pakuluan mo lang, tsaan na siya. Diba? Ganun kasimple. Correct? Or mali ba
Ang
ako?
dami mo magagawa sa bignay eh. You can make it
Pwede
into vinegar. Nako, yung vinegar, ang sarap niyan, yung bignay vinegar.
Pwede,
Or you
pagkatapos
can
nito
make it.
mag-usap tayo, turuan mo ako ng recipe ng Bignay vinegar kasi may puno akong napakayabong ng ang dami-dami kong Bignay harvest. O sige ha? Okay.
Okay, kanina when Sharif was doing his presentation, you were saying sayang meron ka sanang pictures. So I have these pictures. You know, as I said, you know, we are perpetual students, right? For me, I get my biggest inspirations from people like Sharif and, you know, other chefs. And we invite a lot of chefs to teach us anything, what, you know, their expertise. So we invited Sharif to teach us more of food, right? At Purple Yam
Ayan.
Malate.
Very nice.
Ayan.
Okay.
Ngayon, ito yung ingredients na meron siya yung inaluban, ano? Na haluan, yung with dalag. So, yan ang hawak-hawak niya, yan yung dalag, no? Tapos yung gitna, yan yung sinusunog na coconut. Tapos itong si Francis Ang, he's a chef from San Francisco, right? So, tuwan-tuwa siya, naimbita ko siya doon sa bahay at nagbibisita siya ng Philippines, nag-aaral siya. So yan, nakita niya kung paano sinusunog yung coconut para doon sa pamapaitom, right? Okay, next. Next slide. Tapos ito yung sa kaliwa, iyan yung pianggang manok, right? So nakababad yan doon sa pamapaitom, no? Yung burnt coconut na with spices na giniling, right? Tapos you know, you massage it and then you cook it in gata, no? And I don't know, Sharif just correct me. Okay. So, tapos ginigrill. Tapos yung sauce niluluto yon, nire-reduce at yun ang sineserve with that. Tapos ito yung gitna, ito yung palapa ng Maguindanao, yung gitna. Tapos yung kanan is the palapa ng Maranao made with sakurab, right? Correct? I'm the one giving the lecture on moral food.
Very
Okay.
good.
So next.
Okay.
So yan, you're seeing the photos that Sharif taught us. So ito yung inaluban na haluan. This is the ginataang dalag, right? And then the right one is the pianggang manok, you know, made with pamapa itum. Okay, next. That's it.
Naku,
Yun na ba?
magtatanghalian na.
Okay.
Tapos puro time check ang aking staff dito sa akin na masyado na raw akong 1 hour and a half. Eh, paano ba naman? Napaka-interesting nito. At saka
Tapos na
nagtanggap
ako.
talaga ang ating guest. But thank you, Ami. Ami, saan natin makukuha yung mga recipe mo at yung mga libro mo, Ami?
I think yung libro ko baka out of print na. We still have some sa Nakpil.
Okay, nandun sa iyong restaurant at sa mga nasa Amerika, pwede pa silang pumunta sa iyong restaurant, right? You're still open in New York, correct?
Yeah, they'll have to call kasi hindi pwede pumasok eh.
Okay, understood.
take out.
Under these times.
Yeah.
Okay. Tapos magbubukas open for online at pwede rin dine-in later on pag mas normal na ang panahon na safe sa Nakpil and Bocobo. Okay, from Moro Mindanao, Muslim Mindanao to New York, Kabisayaan. Kaon na. Ayan, 11:35. Kasama natin ang ating author at expert sa Cebu culinary heritage. Kasama natin si whom we introduced earlier, Miss Louella Eslao-Alix, to tell us more about the unique Cebuano history of culinary heritage. What are the foods that Cebuanos love? And what are those readily available in your environment? Louella?
Well, okay. Cebuanos being, you know, because Cebu is an island and it's mostly mountains and it's surrounded by water. So the Cebuanos are very picky when it comes to seafood. They don't like freshwater fish, for example. They don't like tilapia or hito or dalag. They don't like that. And that's because they're surrounded by the sea. And so they have a choice all the time of having the best ones. Kaya kuminsan sinasabi, ay, ang suplado nilang kumain. Ayaw kumain ng mga ganong isda. No, it's not being suplado. It's just that they're used to it. No? So, Cebu is shaped, the island of Cebu is shaped like a kamote. Ganun yung sa gitna, and then very little land on the side. We always envy our neighbors, the people in Negros. You have such wide tracts of lands where you can plant rice and so many other stuff. Kami, we have to plant corn or kabog or millet, which does not need much water. Kasi we do not have the luxury of too much water too, and arable land. That's why I think Cebuanos are mostly traders. We trade because we cannot have big farms. All we have are small farms, family farms. And then, yes, geography plays a big part on our choice of food. So mostly we like seafood, very simple dishes. And since time immemorial, if I may use the word, we have always eaten we have always used three basic cooking methods. One is kinilaw. Like, our ancestors used to eat everything raw, for that matter. All mankind ate everything raw. So kinilaw. The root word there is hilaw. So kinilaw is to eat it raw. And so they just chemically cook it with vinegar. So vinegar is also a very important ingredient in Cebuano cooking.
Anong klaseng vinegar ang ginagamit nyo sa Cebu?
Mostly it's coconut, and the second choice is lipa, no? And then
Ay, pareho tayo. Sa
Yeah.
Antique rin, ang aming vinegar, ang tawag namin sa Kinaraya ay langgaw, ay galing sa nipa.
suka.
So sa Cebu, nipa din.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then the choice vinegars are those that are made siete biernes. Families have these big jars where they make their own vinegars, and they ferment it like for 7 weeks, 7 Fridays. That's why the best vinegar that you can find here is called siete biernes. Fermented for 7 Fridays. See? Whether it be nipa or whether it be from coconut, no? Because we use that not just for kinilaw, but for inununan or what's that, paksiw. And after kinilaw, you have sinugba. Sinugba is just to roast, no? To roast. So when man learned how to use fire, we started cooking with fire. And the ultimate sinugba in Cebu is the lechon, ang inasal. We call it inasal actually. The influence of the Tagalogs who have been coming over here and have called our inasal lechon is very strong. Kaya ayun, lechon na ngayon. But in our language, asal to sugba is to cook over live coals. But that involves only parts of an animal. Yung chicken wings or tadyang like that. But if it's a whole animal that you will cook over live coals, that's called asal.
Pag sugba, it is still roasting, ihaw, pero on certain parts only. Pero
Yes.
kung yung buong rino-roast ay inasal na ang tawag.
Inasal, pag buo. Like inasal na manok, inasal na baboy, inasal na kanding. See? But kung pieces lang ng meat, it's called sugba. So, nagsugba is, you presuppose that it's cuts of meat or cuts of fish, like that. And then,
There used to be a very good restaurant in the 70s or 80s in Metro Manila, in Makati, called Sinugba. It
yeah.
must have been a Cebuano owner. Nawala na.
Nawala na.
Kaya masarap.
So,
Tapos ito lang just a little note, no? Sonia Mendoza, who is a partner in this webinar, the Mother Earth Foundation, kumain daw siya sa Cendrillon kay Ami Besa. Is it Cendrillon, Ami?
Oh.
Wow! Sonia texted me now kung pwede raw sabihin, she and her late husband, nag-memory lane siya. Byuda na siya eh. Kumain sa Cendrillon. Oh, okay. O sige, I just had to say that because she's been texting me and watching us because the Mother Earth Foundation and the Eco Waste Coalition, those who espouse ecological solid waste management are partners in this. So it's not just, ay pagkain, hindi. It goes to yung sourcing ninyo from tuba, from nipa, from lahat yan, from sourcing to documentation, kaya nandyan din ang mga experts kamukha niyo at NCCA at pati yung mga ecologists na naghihiwalay ng basura at nagagamit ng food waste for compost. Okay, back to food. Naku, masarap ito. Ano itong manok?
Oh, this one is, we call that tinibuok, meaning cooked whole. It's like tinola, but it does not have a lot of liquid in it. So it's like it's braised in the sabaw with lots of tanglad and sibuyas bisaya. Sibuyas bisaya is sibuyas Tagalog, but if you're in Cebu, we call it sibuyas bisaya, of course.
Yung sibuyas Tagalog.
Simple as that. Okay, it's the same.
Nako-confuse ako.
And then luya.
Maraming salita. Ano ba ang salita sa English? Chives? Hindi.
Spring onions. It's
Spring onions. Naku, ang dami ko niyan. Teka,
And
magpapadala din ako. Ayan,
and
katabi
then
ko
it
lang
has-
ito. Okay.
it has
So,
luya.
spring onions.
And then it has luya.
Spring onions. Okay, spring onions sa Ingles, sibuyas Tagalog sa Luzon,
Yeah.
sibuyas Bisaya sa Cebuano.
Of course.
Pagtawag namin siguro sa Antique, sibuyas Kinaraya. Pag kay Luth Camiña, sibuyas Ilonggo. Hindi, tingnan natin. No? Sige.
Yeah.
Louella, can you share with me later your recipe ng manok na yan? Gusto ko kasi ako mga manok ko, kumakain na ako bang organic, hindi ako bumibili ng mga pinapatabang may chemical na manok. Ayoko yan. Kailangan sa akin free range na organic.
This manok that I used here is called manok Bisaya. I'm sure in Batangas, it's manok Batangas or manok Tagalog. It's native. So it's manok Bisaya. We just call it, you know, a native chicken. It's native
So
to
yan
Cebu.
ay
So it's manok Bisaya.
Okay. So Louella, yan ay native chicken na binudburan mo ng sibuyas, Tagalog. Sibuyas
Yeah.
Cebuano. Sige na nga.
Yes. Tanglad.
Tanglad.
Yes. And ginger.
Aba,
Ginger.
meron ako lahat yan. Ako, saan pa yung akin?
Yeah, you have a lot of that. You plant that. Oh.
Nagtatanim ako lahat yan.
Ang taga Cebu, pag magluto, always adds ginger, by the way. We love ginger here. We have it in our arroz caldo, we have it in our chicken, we even have it in our putumaya. The real putumaya, which we serve for breakfast, is steamed glutinous rice with a little salt and ginger and coconut milk. Without the ginger, the Cebuanos will say, this was not cooked by a Cebuano. Walang luya. You will notice it's not made by, kasi some the putumaya, which the steamed glutinous rice, is also cooked in Pangasinan or in other parts of the country. What differentiates, I think, is that in Cebu we add ginger. That's it, no? And then the kinilaw that is shown here, in most places in Mindanao and the Visayas, the kinilaw is served only with vinegar, but the Cebuanos want to add at the end, just before serving. The Cebuanos will will add freshly squeezed coconut milk just before serving. So there's no time for it to ferment. So it's milky. Sa iba kasi the milky sap is from a certain nut that the Negrenses put. Even in Cagayan de Oro, they have this white fruit that they add to it. But in Cebu, it's white because it has coconut milk just before serving.
No, I am told that we're 45 minutes over time and we still have Luth Camiña and Arvin Villalon. Dapat tayo may part 2. I hate to cut you there, but we will continue all of this and put all your recipes on Facebook. Ang sarap niyan. Thank you, Louella. No, I hate to stop you. You proceed. We'll just have to go on a faster pace because I have another webinar actually at 11:30. Thank you so much. How interesting. Where can we buy your books?
The book is sold by the University of San Carlos, but I think
Okay.
La Solidaridad has it. In Manila, I think Solidaridad
Very
has
good.
it. It's
We
mostly
will buy from Manong Frankie. I'm glad you mentioned La Solidaridad. Lahat po ng gustong bumili ng libro, bumili kayo kay Manong Frankie sa La Solidaridad.
yes.
Thank you, Louella. I hope I didn't cut you. You had more recipes to
A
share.
lot more to talk about because, you know, like one thing, I'm writing my 8th book coming out is a sequel to Hikay. It's the culinary delicacies of Cebu. So
Anong ibig sabihin ng kumbira?
All sweets ito. So I researched for the past 2 years and ang dami kong i-share with Jam nga kasi the buri tree before it dies is cut and then you get carbohydrates from the body, from the trunk of the tree. And it is the source of a certain flour called natok. And that is another ingredient that is made into several delicacies in Cebu.
Wow, how interesting. I'm sure there are many like you in Iloilo. And we proceed now. Magkakakilala ba kayong lahat? Natutuwa ako sa inyong lahat talaga.
Just
Kung maaari
before
lang,
you
kasama
arrive.
ko kayo palagi.
Just before
Yes,
you
I'd
arrive
like
to introduce ourselves to each other.
Yes, I'd like to introduce you. This is only the first, but definitely not the last. And I'm so happy to have all of you. But we proceed to Luth Camiña. Luth, ikaw naman, dear. Hi, do we still have Luth Camiña? Siguro nainip na si Luth o naguluto. Ayan si Luth. Hi, Luth Camiña.
Okay.
Hi, Luth.
Hi, yes, ma'am. I'm presenting our stew, the Kadyos Baboy Langka from Iloilo. It's called the KBL. Iloilo is a top rice producer. We're basically agricultural. We have 167 rivers. And when we opened the Avancenia Camiña Balay Bato, we wanted an Ilonggo narrative for our dining table. And the food that we offer is basically a community collaboration of family and friends. And of course, number one was your inspiration. So batuan is, of course, a sour fruit of the batuan tree. We use that as a souring agent. And since we have plenty of rice paddies, we would normally plant kadyos or the black-eyed peas right after harvest as a nitrogen-fixing legume. So we get another bountiful harvest next season. So the pork hock is normally stored on top of your dapog or the stove. Since there was no refrigerator in the rural areas, you normally have it smoked. So that's part of the Kadyos Baboy Langka stew. And we use tanglad basically in even all our rice, we also add tanglad. So the ingredients of the KBL being the river people, we are the riverine people, would normally be the black-eyed peas, kadyos, the pork hock that has been stewed or you can grill it now. And then the souring agent will be the batuan fruit and then the tanglad. So, and then of course we have the pepper, the sili. So that's what we serve in our Ilonggo cuisine offering at the Camiña Balay Bato.
Thank you very much, Luth. Tell us, where do you source your ingredients?
First, since we have basically a rice farm also in Iloilo, we plant the kadyos to ensure that we have a steady supply. But if we don't have it, we buy it from a neighbor's farm. Everyone has kadyos right after harvest. So did you know, Deputy Speaker, that the prices of pork hock would be directly in proportion to the availability of kadyos? If there's no kadyos, the prices of pork hock in the wet markets would go down.
Aba, konektado pala yun sa
Konektado
KBL
yun,
natin.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next time, we will have part 2 of this, and we will have Antique culinary experts as well in the other provinces. Thank you, Luth. We proceed now to the NCCA. Arvin, how do we itahi natin together lahat ng sinabi nilang lahat? And time is never enough. I apologize to you. I wish I could go on and on, but I have another webinar and I'm being texted every 5 minutes. But Arvin, paano ba ang ating magagawa sa NCCA so that we map all the valuable inputs of all our resource persons?
So just very quickly, I would like to locate where culinary arts would be in terms of the research we're doing. It's actually located under the intangible cultural heritage, which of course is part of UNESCO's framing. Where we talk about intangible, these are about all our practices, that which our chefs and of course our distinguished speakers are talking about. That's why, next slide please. Talk about eating or culinary, it's quoting the Japanese anthropologist Ishigi, is that eating is the act of ingesting the environment. Kaya ganda sabi ni Ma'am Ami kanina na iba ang lasa ng pagkain kung galing sa Pilipinas, yung experiences ni Datu Shariff, no, about the tastes and the connection with the Southeast Asian countries. Ito siguro yung gusto kong summary ng points dito, no? Na ito yung aming gustong tingnan when we do cultural mapping, that culinary heritage or culinary arts is so important. Why? Because it provides a sense of identity and continuity. A lot of our young people also are, and the rest of the Philippine population are looking for identity markers. In our recent research on values, one of the top values, no, top 19 would be arts, culture, and part po dito ay yung culinary heritage. The second is that all this culinary heritage acts in terms of in terms of a social cohesion, no? So it binds people together. At maalala kong fond memories na the best thing that can happen is when you eat together with your family. Kaya sabi nila, ang pinakakawawa daw is kapag kumakain kang mag-isa, di ba? Kasi nga, mahalagang eat together. Yung mga punto na ng the slide please before that. Can you go back? I like the points made by our speakers about how we connect heritage with the natural heritage, about the earth, about how our deputy speakers connect with the plants. But also we would like to look at how culinary heritage are also connected with the objects that we use, no, when we do presentation also of our the finished product. Also, it's a reflection of history, also a repository of values, yung respect for the elders in terms of the cycle of life, and of course, creativity. When you try to invent something like Miss Ami Besa was talking about, all this, na hindi yan parang fixed lang in a certain period of time. Next, please. So, talk about intangible heritage. There are 5 domains actually, no? We have oral tradition, performing arts, social practice, knowledge of the universe, and traditional crafts. Ang Pilipinas, sa aming experience ng mapping, nandun yung 5 domains. For example, pag masarap ang pagkain mo, kakanta ka. Kaya na-invento yung mga awit ng bahay kubo. That's the first introduction to our children about the different ingredients that you around. We have also oral tradition, the wealth of names have. Like Datu Shariff was talking about the kalingag. Actually, Deputy Speaker, tayo dyan sa Panay, yung kalingag, and it was recently discovered or rediscovered in the areas of Panay Bukidnon. And it would be nice, again, to perhaps plant again this tree because ito yung hinanap talaga ng mga Kastila. Art pala ito ng ating heritage. And also, when you social practices. Ang ganda nung binanggit ni Ma'am Louella about the Siete Biyernes, about how it's related with the practices. And Biyernes kasi maraming beliefs, no? I am from Bohol at daghan kayong mga pagtuo or mga paniniwala tungkol po dito. And of course, the knowledge of the universe in terms of the whole plant system and the crafts that are involved when we cook our cuisine, when we weave, when we sharpen our blades, we carve, we mold, and many more. Therefore, Culinary heritage for the Filipinos is an integrated system. Next slide, please. So that's why what we're doing at the NCCA is to safeguard. No? Ano yung safeguarding dito? We would like to promote. These are some of the things that we're doing. We like to revitalize. We want to have more transmission and dissemination, like what Chef Jam is doing in their work, or to preserve and protect, especially those very traditional heritage that we have. And of course, the whole idea of research and Ma'am Louella about promoting it through your books, and si Ma'am Luth, when you open your own restaurant, actually it's a way of inviting, promoting it to the rest of our citizens. Next slide, please. So this is the whole idea of cultural mapping, that we try to map out the significance. Pag tinignan yung significance, andyan yung historical significance, which we're talking about. The taste is part of the aesthetic significance. Economic, because it provides jobs. Scientific, because of the science behind culinary arts. No? When the flavors get together, and that is, it's a long science that we owe it to our ancestors, actually. They have discovered it. And also the socio-political and spiritual realms, wherein food is incomplete if that's not part of prayer, of ritual, or even socio-political when we gather together for a feast or fiesta. That nasa loob nandyan yung intangible and tangible heritage, and that's what we are mapping. So we're not just mapping the cuisine, but the connections of cuisine to the whole culture landscape of the Filipinos. Next slide, please. So ito yung example dun sa makikita nyo, we have forms. We are doing it for the different local government units, at sana kung makakasama ko itong mga kapitapitagang mga nagbahagi, no, na you will be surprised, ang dami pang recipes talaga. Like for example, in Santa Rosa, ang cute ng recipe nila, they have pancit grade 1. Ang cute ng term kasi, bakit grade 1? Kasi na-invento yun dahil meron silang binibenta sa grade 1 pupils. Pero actually, ang tradition doon, instead of squeezing calamansi, they squeeze yung iba, no, or yung kamyas. And it changes the whole flavor of the pancit. So it's a different kind of experience. Or the traditional pinakbet, which is the Ilocano tradition, actually galing sa word na pinakbet, meaning say hanggang you cook it until it becomes kulubot. So very different from the Tagalog cuisine where it ginigisa or you saute it. Or when the Pangasinense would prepare bangus daing, in the tradition, they have to count the bones, yung boneless bangus nila. That's how the old folks taught their children. Kaya hanggang ngayon, when you have boneless bangus from dagupan, ano yan, talagang binibilang nila, they have to remove the certain formula for particular bones. Or even for Pasay. Pasay, which is a city, they have adobong kabayo, which is part of the history of Manila, because doon umuwi yung mga karwahe sa Pasay nung araw. At kapag namatay na yung kabayo, yun, hindi siya nasasayang kasi napapakinabangan siya, ginagawa siyang adobo. So itong mapping na ginagawa namin, ito yung sinabi ko kay Deputy Speaker kanina, na sana wala ba tayong chance na mapabilang ito sa ICH or the Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity. We have so much to offer actually. So in UNESCO, they have a listing of culinary tradition that does not only belong, or is not only the resource of one country, but rather is the resource of humanity. For example, next slide please. About to finish now. So I was part of the Intangible Cultural Heritage consultant for UNESCO. You know, we tried to, Belgium applied, and kami yung we decided if this is really something. You know, they were able to connect their culture from their whole tradition, from planting hanggang production. They were talking about beer as part of their cuisine, as part of their own socialization. And it was declared, I think 3 years ago, that it is part of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Or yung Switzerland, you would see them that they are marking their cheeses at mayroon talagang ICH yun. So hindi ko alam kung pwede sana sa Pilipinas ito at itong ginagawa ng ating mga chef, ng writers natin, and researchers that we're doing at NCCA. Hopefully, we can actually apply for this at anong impact nito, that we're promoting not only this particular cuisine, but we're also promoting our own culture. We have so much to offer actually, and it's just waiting for us to be rediscovered. But the problem is the old folks are dying out. Some are not being passed. We're trying to really map even the processes involved, which comes also with the belief system. Okay, next slide, please. So I'd just like to quote a famous author on culinary arts, Doreen Fernandez, the Philippine cuisine is dynamic as any live and growing face of culture. It has changed to history, absorbing influences, indigenizing, adjusting to new technology and taste, and thus evolving. So what we're doing at NCCA now, we have our own technical work for cultural mapping project that I've said, and that each town who applies for this would actually map out their cuisine. So eventually we can have a cookbook of all the different cuisines. At when you say cuisine, hindi lang po yan yung cuisine na talagang yung panghapunan, pangtanghalian, kasama ang panghimagas, pati na rin yung mga sausawan na magugulat ka pala na meron sa ating bansa. So I would say that from our experience, our country is just so rich and it's just waiting for us again to rediscover and appreciate. That's why those who are listening now at Facebook, especially the young people, there's so much to offer. And so when we look at just the last point, although there's no slide, the cuisine topic, it pushes us to the realm of the senses and the physical, the taste itself. However, for some people, ito yung naging ngayon, pag naging malalim ka na sa culinary heritage mo, it pushes you to the realm of the psychological and historical, the way all of you mentioned this. But also it pushes us even more when the cuisine becomes the realm of the mythic and symbolic. Ito na po yan, Alim. And kapag nakita mo yun, it's the realm of the unitive and integral. That is, as part of humanity, as part of ecology, we actually have a part in the ecology or the system that we are all one as Earth citizen, but we have different expressions. And one of those different expressions would be through the culinary arts. Maraming salamat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arvin. I am greatly appreciative of everyone who took time out. I only said 1 hour, but it's 12:02 and the time is never enough. Pasensya po, humingi ng patawad sa hindi nakapagsalita ng mahaba. Dapat kayo tagli-5 oras bawat isa. Salamat sa inyong kaalaman, salamat sa inyong puso. Nararamdaman ko ang passion ninyong lahat. Salamat din sa NCCA sa pagsuporta at ito ay simula ng ating cultural mapping. Yung inyong mga libro, artikulo, lahat yan by attribution. Ay papromote din natin ang ating restaurant at mga luto ninyo at mga online na order sa inyo. Dapat mapayabong ang industriya ng pagkain. Dapat mapayabong ang pagsaliksik ng halaman at pagkain. Thank you so very much. I will not name each and every one of you. I've talked too much and I'm tanghalian na. Kaon na. Kaon na. Pahingi naman ng mga luto ninyo. Ay, sasarap. Paano ba yan? Hindi ko maamoy ang mga luto ninyo. Babasahin ko na lang mga artikulo nyo at mga libro nyo. Hihingin ko mga cellphone niya, ha? Viber or WhatsApp, ha? At minsan, mag-FaceTime tayo sama-sama, maski hindi naman kailangan naka-livestream sa Facebook. Kasi tuwang-tuwa ako sa inyong talino at passion. Yan ang mahalaga. Sa panahon ng pandemya, maagapan natin ang mga problema na napakarami kung ganitong positibo sa Zoom session na ito ang mga Pilipino. Ang yaman natin ay napapakita sa pagkain. Ang katalinuhan at kagalingan ay napapakita sa bawat isa sa inyo. Kaya we will move forward, pandemic or none, with the cultural mapping of our culinary heritage and culinary arts, and I will file a standalone bill, of course, with the experts' help. Thank you, NCCA. You will always have to work for me, please. Mr. Arvin, huwag kayo magsawa sa aking maraming proyekto. I will forever collaborate and support each other. Thank you so much.
Thank
Be
you.
blessed. Have a good day. Good night. Thank you. Duro gin ka salamat. Palangga ko kamo sa Antique. Thank you so much. God bless us. Thank you, everyone.